Yeah, I'm pointing out facts. If I point a finger, that's point of attack. Good point, who's next? Flag on the plate, now I'm causing them death. We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A die-hard fan, never live with regret. Yes, sir. Go to my neck. Burgundy flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Be my guest. Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep? Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Watch the middle. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feet hit the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
Welcome, one and all across the nation and around the world. I welcome you all to episode 14 of Commanders Gridiron Report here on December 4th. I am Drew Willingham, and we are live for this edition of this episode. And, I'm trying to be as exciting as I can be, given the circumstances of how this game went yesterday. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into that with the 1st and 10.
They are the Washington Commanders. New name, new marks, new uniform.
Soldiers, are we ready for Operation Burgundy?
And here with the 1st and 10, we have to talk about the fact that the Miami Dolphins came to FedEx Field and caused a major collapse with the Washington Commanders as they beat them 45-15 in this game yesterday afternoon. Now, of course, we have not seen great outcomes from the games as of late when it comes to the Washington Commanders, as they've, looking back on that Thanksgiving Day game, you got to look at how that went with the Cowboys in the previous week. The Giants beat them the week before that at home, 31-19. The Seahawks was probably the closest game that they have seen in the past month, and especially in the past 4 games, as they only lost them by a field goal. The last win that they had was on November 5th. Tomorrow will make exactly a month. November 5th was the last time they got a win, and that was against the New England Patriots. And looking at this right here, just looking at the score, definitely was not a good one to watch here. And we'll definitely talk about the highlights and this, that, and the third coming up very soon. But looking at this game from the outside looking in, before I even get to why this happened, just looking at the score, it was pretty rough, 45-15. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and take this into the next segment and talk about the actual highlights of this game.
Go to my neck, Burgundy flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Be my guest.
And here with the Burgundy Flex review. As you see right there, that was the story of the game, the Miami Dolphins, as they took over this game at FedEx Field like it was their own home field. It definitely was not. But looking at it, you could definitely say they were playing like they were at home because, to beat the defending team of their stadium by 30 points speaks volumes. As looking at this, Tua Tagovailoa definitely did great as he only had 6 incompletions for the entire game. He was 18-24, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers by Tua. Definitely was great to see that. Even Mike White got in there for the action, was 1 of 1 for 3 yards for a very short period of time towards the end. But, the running back, Kane coming back, 17 carries, 73 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 4.3 yards per game. Was great to see him do what he did in that return. But, games like these, especially at this point of the year, you should definitely, consider letting go of Ron Rivera. There's been talks of it going on for a magnitude of the past couple of years. But at this point, you've already fired Jack Del Rio. He was your defensive coordinator, and you can't blame him for giving up 45 points and losing by 30 yesterday. Ron Rivera is the one that took over the defense after the firing of Jack Del Rio, and they lost by even worse than what they did the week before. So when I think about that, it's looking more and more like Ron Rivera will not be fired in season. They're going to let him go down with the ship. And they've got 4 more games. This upcoming week, we'll talk about what's in store for them for this week, but they've only got 4 overall games left to finish this season now. And you would hope they finish strong, but at this point, it looks like they might be going for draft picks. And we'll see that more as this show goes on and as this season goes on. We'll talk more about that. But looking at the actual highlights of this game, you got to look back to the first quarter, the very first score, when Tyreek Hill took it to the house for a 78-yard touchdown from Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, that right there. We'll talk more about his yardage at the end of this game here in a little bit. But when it comes to Tyreek Hill, putting up that score right there, a 78-yard touchdown, was huge. And it set the tone for the way this game would go, and especially the rest of this first quarter. Because the Miami Dolphins would add a 49-yard field goal along with a 33-yard interception return by Andrew Van Ginkel for a 33-yard interception return that would give them a 17-0 lead at the end of the first quarter. We don't always see leads like this at halftime. Sometimes it works out for that to be the end of the game. But 17-0 by the end of the first quarter, that is absolutely trash. And you absolutely need this.
Stop it. Get some help.
The Commanders need help. Someone needs to walk into Ron Rivera's office right now and say this.
You're fired.
My vote would be Magic Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of you are probably like, what?
What?
And within saying that, Josh Harris is definitely the majority owner. But Magic Johnson's still part of the crew. At least one of you out there watching this in the moment live or syndicated, probably saying this.
Would you please shut the hell up?
And I will have to follow that up with,
now, that is absurd.
it absolutely is. It is absurd to be losing 17-0 at the end of the first quarter, Commanders. I told you, those of you who were talking to me yesterday, I said I was going to light them up tomorrow because it's the only positive thing we can get out of this show is if I come on here and light them up. It is time for me to light them up like this.
Let's get ready to rumble!
And if you disagree,
You should know your role and shut your mouth!
because it is time to continue on. After the first quarter, we're now just getting into the second quarter of highlights, okay? And this is all for the Dolphins. There's very little highlight action for the Commanders in this game. Let's take that back. Sam Howell had a 1-yard touchdown run to make it a 17-7 game in the second quarter. Great job. Great job, Sammy, because you were one of the very little highlights of this game yesterday. Now, Tyreek Hill, who I talked about for the first quarter highlight, that 78-yard touchdown, the man wasn't done yet. As in the next quarter, in the second quarter, he had a 68-yard pass hauled in from Tua Tagovailoa to make it a 24-7 game. The Dolphins could have gone the rest of the game without scoring, and they still would have won. That's how well they did in the first quarter and a half of football. Now, looking after that, 24-7, of course, they could have gone the rest of the game without scoring, but they scored again. They scored again with a 1-yard touchdown run from Raheem Mostert to make it a 31-7 game going into halftime. 31-7. Commanders, you should be embarrassed. Now, playing a Dolphins team, a team that we've seen great things coming from that explosive offense all year long, especially Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill has definitely been a human highlight reel, a walking highlight reel all year long, and is definitely getting closer and closer to setting that receiving yards record for the season as we approach the final games of the season. But in this game right here, you absolutely destroyed the Commanders. In this game, embarrassed a defensive-minded coach in Ron Rivera, who was a defensive coordinator before he became the head coach of the Carolina Panthers with Cam Newton and came on down to Washington, Maryland, whatever you want to call it, Landover. He came there, and now he's here, and he's given up 45 points as someone who's a head coach, who's a defensive-minded head coach. Give up 45 points. We're not even close to that call yet, as we're still in the second quarter of highlights. In the third quarter, we were talking about the return of the running back as he had a 4-yard run for a score to make it 38-7. And then he wasn't done yet. For that, Sam Howell would have a 13-yard run with a Logan Thomas 2-point conversion from Sam Howell to make it a 38-15 game. Okay, at that point. They hadn't even finished scoring on the Miami Dolphins side yet, but at least Sam Howell was part of the highlight parts when it came to the Commanders right here. Looking at this situation right here, looking at how this is going to go for the Commanders the rest of this season, it's not looking good, especially when they gave up another touchdown to a Kane in the fourth quarter to make it what it was at 45-15. Now, again, the Dolphins could have gone from the second quarter, the rest of the game, without scoring for the rest of the game, and they still would have won that mother-fathering game. That's how bad the Commanders were playing. I don't know if it was more so bad on the Commanders or really great on the Dolphins defense because of some of the things that they were doing within that game, some of the moves that they were making. I would have to say it'd be a little bit of both because Sam Howell was held to a low of 127 as far as passing yards. It was 12 of 23 and had an interception. Didn't have any type of scoring except for on the ground with his legs as he ran it in for 2 touchdowns. But it's not like he had a lot of yardage to back that up. He was 4 of 21, 4 carries for 21 yards. Oh, wow, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry and had 2 touchdowns. But still, those are not, exuberating numbers right there. Numbers that I don't get excited about. Even Bishop Bullwinkle's saying,
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no.
even Coach Prime getting in on the action.
Ain't nobody care. Who cares? Ain't nobody care.
Come on, guys, let's get with it now. When we look at this situation right here, when we look at the fact that Sam Howell was part of the highlight of the side when it came to the Commanders, the majority of it came on the shoulders of, the other side. The Dolphins, Tua, and Tyreek Hill. And, of course, the running back did a pretty good job, too. And we'll talk about that more as the show goes on. But looking back at the highlights, on just the highlights alone, there's definitely more that we'll break down as we get through the rest of this show. But just those highlights speaks enough volumes in itself how bad this Commanders team is going up against a juggernaut like the Dolphins this year and what they've been able to accomplish. Good on them. I'm happy to see Tua healthy and doing the things he's been doing since his, rough year last year, because there was a lot of scrutiny around that in his head injury. Now looking at this, good on Tua, good on Coach McDaniel, good on that entire team, but bad on the Commanders. In this ownership group, I'm giving them a mulligan for this year, okay? Until the offseason, when they have ample time at that point to make some moves. When you have ample time this offseason, I'm taking the mulligan away. Right now, the mulligan is there, and I'm going to ease up on you. If you lose the rest of this year and you have decent draft stock next year and you make some good moves, I'm going to keep that mulligan for this season. But if you go into this offseason and you do it like you've been playing like dumpster pelicans, if you make dumpster pelican moves this offseason, I will have some issues to discuss with that. We will talk about it throughout the summer if that's the case on this show next year, and we will talk about it throughout next season. But right now, I'm going to try to stay hype and excited about the positives of what I saw in this Commanders team. It wasn't much. It definitely wasn't much at all. Old Sammy Howell kept trying. He kept fighting out there. And I know some of y'all are probably saying, what were you seeing? Because I saw this.
That's terrible.
Hey, and if you're going to look at it that way, I will follow it up with this.
You can't handle the truth.
Now,
Acknowledge me.
now we're back. Now looking at this right here, looking at the Commanders situation, it's not pretty. It's not pretty whatsoever, especially when you look at all those highlights I discussed. Tyreek Hill had the two biggest highlights of the game that I talked about within those highlights, but definitely wasn't pretty whatsoever. I am not excited for the remainder of this year to come as far as the quality of play from the Commanders throughout the rest of this year. I even think that if you had Montez Sweat and Chase Young in yesterday's game, it still wouldn't have made much of a difference. They might have lost by 20 points instead of 30. They might have let them only give up 35 points in the game, but the Commanders' offense still would have put up 15 as they were getting mollywopped from start to finish and laying the smackdown, followed by hearing this at the end of it.
You should know your role and shut your mouth.
Now, people,
Let me talk to you.
as that's what I've been doing this entire show since we started about 17 minutes ago. Looking at this situation right here, I was not hype when this game started. I was not hype in the middle of the game, and I sure as hell wasn't hype about the game at the end of it. I am only hyped now to get excited about what is to come during the offseason and the moves they can make for this offensive side, hopefully on that offensive line to help protect Sam Howell a little bit better, as you got some decent receiving weapons. But if you don't have enough time to think about where the next move's going to be they're going to make and looking at the coverage and being able to throw the ball accurately, you could have the greatest quarterback of all time, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II, back there in his prime like 10 years ago. And he still wouldn't be able to get the job done because Tom Brady, like any other quarterback, needed time to think. And I'm not comparing Sam Howell to Tom Brady, but what I am telling you is that just like any good or great quarterback out there who's had success in this league, you have to have protection and you have to have the right pieces around you, your aces in places, in order to make it happen. And if we're going to see better highlights out of the Commanders than what we saw this past weekend, those moves are going to have to be made, and I will definitely acknowledge that as we get further in this show. Looks like we have a comment from Snowman. Snowman is here saying, hey. Well, thank you, Snowman, for jumping in and checking out the show. Definitely glad to have you a part of the audience there, brother, and hope that you are doing well out here in these streams. Definitely will have to check out Snowman in the morning here earlier from what that show was earlier today. As you know, with my work schedule, I'm sleeping during that time, usually when you have that show on, which is why it's kind of tough for me to jump out of bed on Tuesdays, but I make it happen to be there with our guy, Cole Johnson, and delivered to what I believe is definitely one fun show with old Cole Johnson there. And even Ike is here and says, yo, well, I appreciate you guys being here for the start of the show. We still have 4 more segments ahead of us. I don't know how great some people will look at them is because of the style of play that we're having from the Commanders. But when it comes to that, we'll get to that here very shortly. But before we do that, we're going to take it to our first commercial break. And when we come on back, we've got the Soldiers of the Week and the Showstopper when we come on back. And with that being said, I'll see you here on the other side.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Football, and more football, you say? Well, tune in to Total Football Talk. Join your hosts, Drew Willingham.
You were playing like a dumpster Pelican quarterback.
And Cole Johnson.
It sets up for possible play action. Did you hear that, Dak Prescott?
As they take you through all the paces, both on the field and in the boardroom, of Total Football Talk. Every Tuesday at
9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central.
Exclusively on the Surtoba Media and the Comey Media Incorporated YouTube channel.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. $ D Willie 87. Go ahead, hit him up on the Cash App, and go ahead and give him some Willie the bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen, stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. How about some Willie bucks?
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
If you're looking for a sports program that gives you the flavor.
Washington Commanders? Really?
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
That pulls no punches.
Thuggish act by a thuggish actor.
That gives you some humor.
Praise everything LeBron does and never criticize it.
If you want a show that gives you good times, then this is that show. BS3 Network proudly presents.
I am Cole Johnson, and welcome to
Cole Sports with a Z. Every Friday on Patreon, and every Saturday on YouTube, Spreaker, and all other outlets.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
And welcome back to episode 14 of the Commanders Gridiron Report, as we are here on December 4th, live in action on this Monday afternoon, the first show of the month of December. And we got some comments here in the chat. Let's see who we've got here. Looks like Ike is back and says, how about them Giants? Well, they were on a bye week this week, I can tell you for one. But they are on a 2-game winning streak. Yes, they beat the Commies the week before. They beat the Patriots before they had the bye week this past week. So congratulations, Ike, for being on a 2-game winning streak and rubbing it in just a little bit more here for the Commanders. But right here, Ike, we have to talk about the Soldiers of the Week. And with the Soldiers of the Week, it's not going to be pretty for the Commanders, but we're going to talk about it. Let's go ahead and discuss that here for this segment.
Where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
And the Soldiers of the Week that I have for this game right here all come from the Miami Dolphins. But you have to acknowledge them, as Tua Tagovailoa had 18 completions on 24 attempts, 280 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, along with Tyreek Hill's 5 receptions, 157 yards, in a video game-like performance like he's been doing all year long for 2 receiving touchdowns, along with Davon Akane, 17 carries, 73 yards, 2 mother-fathering rushing touchdowns again. 2 mother-fathering rushing touchdowns again. Back to the graphic. These 3 guys here, even though they are all offensive players, were what I thought made the biggest impacts to this game right here. Now, you could discuss the fact that, the Dolphins defense did pretty good too. You can look at David Long Jr., who had 4 tackles and 3 assists. He was probably the highlight of the defense that I'd have to say right there, because of course, the 1 interception went to Andrew Van Ginkel, 4 tackles, 1 assist. But there wasn't a lot of sacks in this game. There was only 2, and it was 3 total sacks. One person had a sack and a half, another person had a sack, and the other person had a half a sack, all combined to make 3 total sacks in the game. So even though Sam Howell is getting knocked around, and he's been knocked around a lot this season on sacks, we've talked about in several episodes, it wasn't nearly as bad when he's only getting 3 sacks in this game, or taking 3 sacks in this game. So when I look at the Soldiers of the Week for this one, arguably in my case here, I'd have to say it's these 3 people. Tua, Tyreek, and Davon are my 3 choices for the Soldiers of the Week. With that being said, we'll go ahead and take this into the showstopper and see what's in store for the next segment.
High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feed the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
And for the showstopper, what adjustments should the team make to improve from week 13? Looking at this right here, looking at this graphic right here, you have to wonder how long these two will be together on this team. But looking at this, you know, the adjustments that they should make, what do you guys think out here? It looks like we do have one comment right away that says, fire Ron Rivera. Well, when it comes to that, damn! You know, when it comes to that one,
Let me talk to you.
I would have to agree with you. I mean, it's definitely time. We've been talking about this for quite some time, but I just don't think they're going to do it until the offseason. If they were going to do it between now and the end of the season, right now, on this day, on Monday, the day after the game is the best time to do it because you have a bye week this upcoming week. You literally have 13 days before you play again. I mean, you have a full week of rest ahead of you. So, well, full 2 weeks. So looking at that, this would be the perfect time if we were going to do it between now and the end of the season, in season, to do it now. But with you only having 4 games left, if you don't do it now, you're not going to do it. And I feel like if you were going to do it, now would be the right time because you need to see Eric Bieniemy and see in those 4 games if he can do something good with this team. Or if you're the ownership group that wants to have a great draft choice in that first round next year, you're probably just going to keep it the way it is and kind of in a way hope to tank out the rest of the year to get a higher pick to bring somebody else on this team that will help make an impact. My choice would not be on the quarterback side because I feel like Sam Howell is that dude, but they need to bring in other pieces around him, primarily on that offensive line. They do not need to be drafting high for a running back or another quarterback or another receiver. They need to make an impact on this offensive line, and I cannot stress it enough that they need to find somebody, not even if it's not within that first round pick, but if it's throughout the majority of the rest of the picks, because they have a lot of draft choices in this upcoming draft. They need to make a lot of moves to address the issues on that offensive line. So good on you, Ike, for throwing that out there, but I don't think it's going to happen in season. It will happen, but it's going to be during the offseason, shortly after this regular season concludes. Probably during the playoffs. The playoffs will be going on when Ron Rivera gets fired, and they'll already be interviewing candidates before the Super Bowl starts. That's going to be my bet, my choice, and what I'm writing it out with. Guys, let me know here in the comments how you feel about that. With that being said, we'll go ahead and take this into our next segment after our final commercial break. I'll see you here on the other side of this final commercial break.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition, dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, go yourself again. Jason Whitlock.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ D Willie 87. Go ahead, hit him up on the Cash App, and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. How about some Willie Bucks?
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commanders Gridiron Report. You want your Commanders to be repped right? Well, D. Willie is your man. Commanders Gridiron Report, every Monday at 3:05 p.m. Eastern, 2:05 p.m. Central, exclusively on the Surtoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J.KUL.
Where my soldiers, right side, Commanders. Where my soldiers, left side.
Surtoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Commanders. Where my soldiers, right side, Commanders. Where my soldiers, left side.
Welcome back to episode 14 of the Commanders Gridiron Report, as we are back for the final two segments of this show right here, as we have to discuss the next one, that being the opponent of the week.
Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep?
And here for the opponent of the week. This week, it's actually a bye week. When you look at who this team plays this week, the fact they don't play anybody is definitely good, because they needed a break. They needed a break from everything going on in this 4-9 season. It's definitely been ugly. Definitely something, of course, from this game right here we just talked about earlier, definitely not a great week for them. So good for them to actually get a chance after playing in 13 consecutive games. A rough schedule. Not an excuse for being 4-9, but it is pretty tough to play that many consecutive games. So looking at this, the fact that it is a bye week this week, what could or should happen during this week is, like I was talking about in the previous segment, if they're going to fire Ron Rivera during the season, they need to do it today. Now, it's almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon on this day. I don't see them actually coming through with that. It's not going to happen. They're going to ride it out the rest of this year. If anything that they should do at this point, they need to see some other pieces that they may have on the practice squad, or somebody they can pick up as far as offensive linemen, to see if there's anybody they could at least be invited to camp next year, if they're not already locked into a contract or something. But they need to see what options they have around them, because it's not looking great as far as what they have on that team. It's definitely not looking good at all. So this right here, when I look at this team, anything that could and or should happen this week is more than likely not going to happen. This Commanders team is going to be the same team that we saw within the past month of play before they went on this losing streak of losing games. It has not looked good for them since, again, that November 5th game that we were just talking about not that long ago, where they got that win over the Patriots by a field goal, 20-17. Ever since then, they lost to the Seahawks by 3. They lost to the Giants by 12. And they lost to the Cowboys by 35 and to the Dolphins by 35. By 30. They lost to the Cowboys, 45-10 the week before on Thanksgiving, and 45-15. So the only difference in this game with the Dolphins is they were able to score 5 more points than the previous week. If anything, when it comes to the moves that you're making for this week, you definitely need to I don't know if there's any way to improve your offensive line within this next week and a half, but if there's any exercises or any film or something to help them play better, to help Sam Howell produce better numbers, it's all because of the amount of time he's getting from that offensive line. You can look at this and look at the stats all you want to, but when you look directly into the game, especially in the highlights, if you didn't even watch the whole game like I did, but if you had to look at the highlights, you could see within those highlights that it is the structural foundation of that offensive line that's causing the issues in the backfield with the quarterback, the running backs, people getting banged up. Luckily, Sam Howell's been out there for every single game this year, but he's not feeling the same way that he did during week 1 at this point. So it's good for them to get this bye week. get a little bit of rest. Hopefully they'll feel better when they come back in week 15. But looking at this, after 13 games, they needed this break in week 14. And hopefully they can show us some type of flashes of positive things for the future within these last 4 games, even if they lose the next 4 games. I just want to see positive flashes of what the team could be for next year or the year after that, with the pieces that it looks like they're going to potentially keep. But anything could happen in the NFL. We could see a magnitude of things happen with this team during the offseason. So we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But thinking about it in that retrospect, that's the best way I could really put it when it comes to what they could and or should do during this bye week right here. Now, it looks like Ike comes in and says EB will suck as a head coach too. Well, I wasn't going to go that far. Damn! I think there's a lot of people out there that are saying this there.
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, to the no, no.
I mean, really looking at that comment right there, I was saying this.
What?
Really, I was saying this.
What?
More than likely a third time following it up with this.
What?
Absolutely. Oh!
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, looking at this, Ike again says, I will back this up with facts. Well, based on the time that you sent that like 5 minutes ago, I haven't seen you back it up with any facts yet. What facts are you backing this up, Ike? Let me know here in the comments what you're backing up the facts with, and we'll definitely get back to this at some point. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and take this into the final drive and get this show ready towards wrapping it up.
We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A diehard fan never live with regret. Yes, sir.
And the final drive is here when it comes to the final segment of this show, as we've had some great things to talk about so far in this show. Psych, got them. There has not been a lot of great things in this show except for maybe some of the energy that I brought behind some of the things we were talking about, along with the hashtag Fire Ron Rivera movement, hashtag Fire Riverboat Ron movement. Some of you were saying out there that I've been reading on some social media platforms and saying in certain comments certain things as I've watched certain things over the past 18 hours or so since the yesterday's game ended. Well, now almost 24 hours. That game was so ugly. The fact that it wasn't even over yet and they were already shifting to other games within the network to give you something better to watch. I mean, that's always an example of dumpster Pelican play on that day. Congratulations on the Commanders for getting 5 more points than you did the week before when you played on Thanksgiving Day against the Cowboys when you lost 45 to mother-fathering 10. Okay? At least in this week, you only lost 45 to 15. You lost by 30 points instead of 35. You should be proud. Now, looking at this, my closing thoughts heading into week 14 is I hope they get some decent rest this week, along with, if they're not going to be as physical out there and, not working on things more so in a physical aspect, what they should do is study. Grab a book like on the shelf behind me, a book full of plays, a book full of literature. If you actually care on finishing this year, potentially 1 game under 500 and win out the next 4 games, isn't going to happen based on who you're playing the next 4 games. But if you want to at least try to psych yourself up mentally for it, you could by practicing what most people like to call reading out here and comprehending it and seeing if that helps you out once you go out to the practice field next week after having that week off and you're at least sharp intellectually out there. I think that could help you a little bit. But what do I know? I don't play in the NFL. That'll probably be what they'll say to me, part of Surtoba Media, A7BN Sports Team, NBS Media, whatever is representative on the sleeve in that moment of me talking to them. But hey, that's just how I feel about it when it comes to my closing thoughts heading into week 14. We will be back next week as the first half of the show. We won't be talking about as much because you can't really highlight a bye week, but we will definitely probably touch more base on what was talked about today, but also preview the upcoming week's game for week 15. So I definitely wanted to assure you guys that just because there's a bye week doesn't mean I'm taking a break from this show. We will be back and intend to be here every Monday throughout the regular season. Once the playoffs get here and they are eliminated, break may be taken until the head coaching moves are made or whatnot. Like if something happens and there's no big moves for that week, like we'll say the season ends and there's no big moves for like a week or two, may not do the show for a week or two. But for right now, for the remaining 5 weeks of the season, we will have those weeks filled up, with shows for this. So definitely wanted to assure that was actually a question that somebody reached out to me on Twitter about like 3 weeks ago that I didn't even get back to until the other day because, well, X, whatever you want to call it. I just don't get on social media as much as I used to, for one. The free time I do have, outside of the other things that I have obligations to, I spend prepping for the shows and check out some things on social media, maybe in like the stories or whatnot. But other than that, like if it's a direct message to me, unless you're hitting up my phone directly with a text message or a phone call, it could be days before I respond, unless I really want to talk to you. I'm sorry, I'm just being real. But if I'm actually on social media, there's days where like I'm working my full-time job and there'll be like 4 or 5 days I won't even get on social media just because of how in depth my job is there. And I work like a mid to late shift. So, I'm getting home 1, 2, and 3 o'clock in the morning at times, and I don't feel like talking to people at those certain times. And then I'm sleeping during the morning, getting back up in the early afternoon and going back to work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a different lifestyle when it comes to on the days that I work tomorrow, as I work Tuesday through Saturdays. But again, with that long-winded answer aside, you can still find this show on Mondays at 3:05 p.m. Eastern time. You can also find, which today was 3:20. My apologies, technical difficulties. Shout out to Xfinity for making it a tougher challenge to get on here today. To tell you, it has definitely been a fun one with those of you out there who have been commenting and participating throughout this show. It means a lot to me, and I definitely appreciate it. For those of you who are here every single week, the returning viewers, the new viewers that come out and watch this stuff even after it's been live, thank you guys for liking, sharing, and subscribing to the content, as well as for when you've watched Total Football Talk on Tuesday mornings from 9 a.m. Eastern to noon, whether it's here on Sartoba Media or on Comey Media for Cole Johnson's channel, whether you're watching this show right now on Sartoba or on A7BN Sports Facebook page or on Team MBS Media's YouTube page. Thank you all for tuning in there as well, supporting those brands and liking and sharing and subscribing to those networks as well. There's some things I have in mind for 2024. Not concrete plans that I've made yet because there's some conversations that I need to have with some other people before they can kind of be concrete. But my mind has been circling around some things here lately and putting, like I've talked about with other things within this show earlier, teams putting their aces in places and making the right moves. If we can, continue to band together and do the things that we're doing and making the moves there, I've got some ideas on how to expand some things, but I can't release all that now. What I can tell you is that those conversations will be had during the next 4 to 6 weeks. And within that time frame or shortly after, I will have something to talk to you about. So just to kind of reassure you that even though I'm not as active on social media as I once was, it doesn't mean that, anything is going on except for I'm still trying to find ways to build what we've already built even better and improve it and improve the structure of the foundation, if you know what I'm saying, as we were talking about earlier with the offensive line for this team. But, I couldn't do it without those of you that are watching this show, whether it's live, whether it's, post live, when it's syndicated, whatever you want to call it. And those of you who are liking and sharing, those of you who are reaching out to me individually. And again, if you're reaching out to me and days are going by before I respond again, I was just joking when I said what I said earlier, but it's really because I'm busy. I just don't have time to look at it. But if I am responding to you, it speaks volumes, because if I'm not responding to you, then you've already burnt that bridge at that point, and it's up to you, I guess, to figure out how to repair that, because I'm not going to go above and beyond to figure that out. But luckily that's not with that many people. But what I can tell you is this has definitely been one fun project. It was the first episode in December that we've had, as we'll have a few more in December, a couple in January before we take that break we were talking about. But definitely has been an interesting year. I can't say a great year for the Commanders. It's definitely been an interesting one with the ownership changes. And, the first part of the season was definitely energizing. Part of it was electric. We were getting excited, and all of a sudden just the wheels came off. It wasn't out of nowhere, because the games they were losing early on, we saw flashes of what this team eventually would become towards this part of the season. But we also see that there's a lot of potential for the future if the right moves are made. Not just during this offseason, but the next 3 to 4 off seasons. So who knows? The next 5 years, we could be talking about the Commanders like we're talking about the Dolphins at this time, as the Dolphins had to go through their woes to get to where they're at now. And just like other teams as well, the Chiefs did before Andy Reid came in, and so on and so forth. Could old Bill Belichick be coming to the Commanders? And if so, should we get excited about it, or should we not? We shall see as time moves on. But what I can say now is this has definitely been, at least for me, another fun episode of the Commanders Gridiron Report. Thank you to Ike, for participating, Snowman, for showing up and throwing in a comment as well. Just the one comment, but hey, it's still a comment. Thank you for jumping in. But guys, as always, I've only got one more thing left to do, and that is show you one badass outro. I am Drew Willingham, and I only have one last message to leave for you here. And that is to stay safe out here in these streets.
Who do we rep? Commanders, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side, Commanders, where my soldiers, watch the middle, Commanders, where my soldiers, now we step, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, who we rep? Where my soldiers, left side, now we step, where my soldiers, watch the middle. Command we red, where my soldiers man, hit 'em.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.